Broadcasting from the LoadingReadyRun orbiting underground moon base, it's the LRRcast.
Hey, it's the LRRcast.
Yeah, and this week, it is myself.
And a third one.
Yes.
All right, there we go.
That was wholly useless to anybody who is listening to it.
I'm James.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ian.
Yay.
All right. And we're here this week to talk to you about spoilers.
So, spoiler warning. Spoilers.
Spoiler warning, this episode's about spoilers. There's a good chance that that spoilers will come out. So deal with it.
It's like, oh, I really hate it when people talk about spoilers. Like, for example.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Final spoiler, James dies in the end.
Damn, really? Shit.
Sorry, I didn't want to ruin it for you.
I should have read ahead.
Yeah, that was a spoiler.
Spoiler, yeah. So, it's a topic idea that I had the other last week or 2 weeks ago. I think somebody who I followed on Twitter didn't they didn't get angry or lose their shit. They were upset that on, I believe it was I think it was Tuesday, but it could have been Monday, that something from the previous episode of Game of Thrones had been spoiled for them on Twitter. And that got me thinking to all about spoilers, whether it and different area, do spoilers ruin, if you go into a movie and you know the ending, does that ruin it for you? Right. How do you survive on the internet without running into spoilers constantly, because it's hard, and statutes of limitations, and there's just a lot of stuff we can talk about here. So
I guess to start with, I mean, the first thing would be, what is a spoiler?
Yeah.
For you, because because I feel like there's the distinction of stuff that's in, for a movie, stuff that's in the trailer. Is the trailer a spoiler? It sometimes can be.
It can be. Again, if you live your life not seeking out trailers, and somebody talks to you about the trailer, I think that's not a spoiler, but the person who actively seeks to not watch these trailers would think it is, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Or just for a movie, sometimes I just is it good?
Yeah.
Right. It's is the movie good? I don't want to know anything about it. Did you like it? You did? Excellent. I'm going to go see it. I'm happy that you liked it.
Yeah.
Directors don't even cut their own trailers a lot of times these
they
days.
don't. This is mostly the studio.
I mean, something that a director could consider to be a surprise event in the movie.
Yeah.
We might consider a spoiler. That's something that could come out in the trailer. So
yeah. I mean, I love that when you watch a trailer that has, what you would consider to be what you'd usually consider to be the trailer stuff in it, action sequences or all this kind of stuff, in sort of a this guy is a regular man going about his job, and then something happens, and then it keeps going. The trailer just keeps going. It's then this weird twist happens in his life, and then this happens to him. And
Luke,
then this.
Han, and Leia are running from the evil empire led by Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But he's got one secret that Luke doesn't know.
I'm
your father.
Well, that's the thing.
It's when the trailer just keeps going far. It's usually it's we should not be seeing scenes from the last 15 minutes of the movie in this trailer.
So what do you consider? Because for me, there you can spoil the end of a movie, but generally speaking, when you go into a movie, you have a pretty good sense. I mean, let's just use the event. Let's use Marvel for instance right now. The latest Avengers movie came out. And if somebody had come up to me before the movie and said, Ultron wins, I would have been like, bullshit, you're wrong. That's not a spoiler. The good guys obviously win, right? So if somebody had come up to me and said, spoiler alert, Iron Man wins the day, I'd be like, yeah, you're probably right.
No, actually, it's a good example, too, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Vision wasn't in the trailers, was he?
No, but he was in the posters and promotional material.
Yeah, that's the weird thing.
And that's the thing, right? Is that, so that was kind of that movie's twist, but it wasn't really a well-hidden twist, whereas, and spoiler alert, And I actually don't know if either. Have you guys seen Iron Man 3?
Yes.
Okay, so Iron Man 3, the big twist in Iron Man 3 was the Mandarin wasn't actually
Yes.
who the movie made it out to be until very, very late in the end. And I didn't know about that going into the movie. If I had been spoiled that piece of information, I think that's the kind of spoiler that would get to me. That's the kind of thing that would because for Age of Ultron, I know the good guys are going to win. You telling me that the good guys are going to win is not going to sour that experience and that journey for me. But if you tell me that the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 isn't actually that dude, it's the little silly white dude with lots of money, I'd be like, oh, well, fuck, come on. Okay.
Why did you take away this 30 minutes of fun that I
Yeah.
So for me, a spoiler is ruining a massive twist or surprise in the movie, and not just sort of the overall plot of the movie, because most movies these days are pretty formulaic. You can kind of know what's going on.
Certainly like action-y type movies, yeah.
I remember having a conversation about this recently. I think it might have been with you, but I want to take that idea and expunge it a bit more. To me, a spoiler is something where a story hinges on that particular piece of information not being known. So, like in The Usual Suspects or Iron Man 3.
Yeah,
it's integral to the plot.
Yeah,
and if you know it going in,
and I mean there is sort of a selfishness. I mean, obviously people, you inadvertently get spoiled and stuff, but people there's sort of people are almost sort of deliberately going out spoiling things.
Yeah, I mean those people are just complete dicks.
But there's a certain I was just thinking there's lots of movies that are as good, if not even sometimes better, on second viewing.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? I mean, just recently, I know, for instance, Cam has watched Fury Road 10 times.
10 times now or something, yeah.
But the experience is different.
Yes.
Watching it the second time or the third time or the fourth time as opposed to the first time.
Because then you can pick out those little clues you might have missed the first time through and say, wait, he was the Mandarin.
And so, I mean, I, as someone who is, I think, fairly up to date with general pop culture stuff, that in the sense that, I am in danger of spoiling things for other people some of the time.
Yep.
I am conscious of this idea that to do that would be robbing that person. You're robbing the person of that experience that you had watching it the first time.
Yeah.
And it's tough because you want to talk about it to somebody, but robbing somebody of that experience is a real mean thing to do.
Yeah.
But there is also that study. I think that are we all familiar with that study that came out a couple of years back? It was specifically on the idea of spoilers, finding that as a whole, the public gains actually more enjoyment for a story knowing the ending going into it.
Interesting.
It certainly, I think it relieves. I used to know somebody who would almost never go into a movie without knowing what happened first because they found it too stressful. They enjoyed being able to sit back, relax, and just let the movie wash over them without having to constantly be in this state of, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Paying attention.
And that's fine. There are some people whose anxiety ticks way higher than most. So,
well, and it's for something like Avengers, that the good guys are going to win,
right?
But hey, this is Joss Whedon.
Yeah,
he could full on kill somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
He could kill somebody that you really like.
Yep. And especially for people who have anxieties. Quite frankly, there is a special type of spoiler warning, which is actually important, the trigger warning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I guess I never really thought of that as a spoiler warning, but I guess in some ways it's a spoiler, but you don't want to well, look at this thing is really what that's a spoiler.
Yeah, you really don't want to see it, but you have to know that it's there. Otherwise, you're going to be caught unawares, and that can cause some real damage.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's certain types of movies that, I mean, I guess the other way of going completely is there are movies that I do deliberately spoil for myself. Sometimes movies that I don't even intend to watch.
Those are the movies that I more often spoil for myself.
Like that I'm like, I don't think this movie is worth 2 hours and $10
of my life.
My life. But I'm kind of curious about what it is.
Yep.
I'll just read the Wikipedia page and spoil it for myself, or I'll read like an article talking about it or a movie review of it. So that's sort of another aspect of that continuum, I guess, from there's sort of, I guess there's the continuum of somebody who's just like going around maliciously spoiling things for people, and then to people who are just spoiling things for yourself because you don't care.
Again, it's two different ways of storytelling. It's the story that hinges on secret information, and then there's just stories that are good stories, well told.
Yeah.
Like, how long, just because it was one of those things that was like a really big deal for spoilers, how long after The Sixth Sense?
Yeah.
Like I remember in the Lonely Island, it was the Jizz in My Pants thing where he's like, when Bruce Willis was dead, Sixth Sense. And I remember even then like being like, oh wow, they're actually just gonna tell everybody that. Yeah. And that was like 10 years later or something.
That's the big like thing with spoilers is the statute of limitation and what is that? Does that even exist anymore?
Does everybody know who kills Dumbledore now?
Yeah, like
if you don't, you should not be listening to this.
Like that's an argument that I think
Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's an argument that I've heard since sort of the dawn of the internet. And nowadays, with Reddit and Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr and all of these places that people go to every day, I kind of feel like there just isn't a statute of limitation anymore. Like, at least not in a way that you can get actually angry if something gets spoiled for you.
I think there is a lot of self-responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, if you go to r/Game of Thrones
on Monday,
yeah, and you're angry that people are talking about the thing,
sure,
then you're that's not a spoiler. That's you looking for people's opinions on it and then getting angry when they give you your opinion.
Yeah.
So that and maybe the statute of limitations is now 4 hours, just enough time from the East Coast to finish watching something for the West Coast to watch.
Right, yeah,
and it's funny because Twitter has become such this thing that people use. And people while they're watching,
people live tweet while they're watching.
Exactly. So,
although to be fair, often people tweeting while they're live watching isn't actually a spoiler because they'll just be like, "Holy crap, that happened!"
Yeah,
that will be the tweet.
Exactly.
You'll be like, "Well, thanks."
Well, like because I know like
that was both a spoiler but also useless.
On Monday, I can't remember. I guess it was Monday when I was in LA or something. I opened up my phone and started scrolling through Twitter, and all I just saw was about half a dozen people to like 10 people just being like, "Holy crap, Game of Thrones." That was it. They didn't actually spoil it. They were just saying, "Holy crap, Game of Thrones." So clearly something massive happened in this most recent episode of Game of Thrones, I guess 2 weeks ago.
Or they're all working together.
To troll you. But I feel like at this point, especially for TV shows, I think maybe more so than movies, if you want to go unspoiled, then you need to watch that TV show within 24 hours and do a fairly good job of maybe avoiding social media.
But what happens when you get something like House of Cards? When you're dealing with 13 episodes that come out all at once.
Yeah, and you know what? And
if
that's
you
where it
didn't
gets
marathon
tricky.
that thing, then
I'm still 1 episode behind.
Like that's tricky because like I've watched all of season 3 of House of Cards, and I watched probably like 5 or 6 episodes when that thing dropped. Like I was up until like 5 o'clock in the morning, like an idiot. But I just had this. I wanted to be there with everybody else and be among some of the first people to ever watch it. But yeah, for shows like House of Cards or Unbreakable or any of the other Netflix original series, Daredevil, where it's just like, well, here's 13 episodes, go nuts. Yeah, where's that limit? Because normally this would take 13 weeks to get through, but now it can just take 13 hours. And it's kind of understandable to get mad at that person who's talking about the final episode of Daredevil 14 hours after it was first released, right? Because now it's just like, well, like, come on, like, no normal human being is where you're at.
It's I like there's always that balance between it's like, when can you talk about it? When can you spoil it and talk about it publicly? But also, you're really excited about this thing and you want to talk about it with other people who have seen it.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we've sort of solved that in some ways with forums and things where it's like, this is a thread about Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Don't go into this thread if you don't want to read about Game of Thrones. Like, you can have sort of a portal or a, you know, some sort of gate.
Even the spoiler tagging on some of those forums too.
Right.
The ability to.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe that's actually helped a lot too, right? Is that now people have this place to go and talk with people. Reddit is huge for that, right? Like every single show has their own Reddit and subreddit, and like that's
sometimes aspects of that show.
I use Reddit for two reasons: Magic, TCG, and all the TV shows I watch. And then like I go to the front page every once in a while to see what's going on. But mostly I'm like, all right, I just watched the most recent episode of House of Cards. Let's go look at that discussion post. I watched the most recent episode. What is my
opinion about this episode?
Yeah,
I need to find out.
I need to figure out what, I need to figure out how to get my opinion into words. You guys are going to do that for me. Same with Community and all of these other shows, right? Is that I have this chance to be like, Paul, have you seen the latest Community? No? Okay, well then I'm going to go to Reddit because they have.
Reddit will be my friend.
And Reddit will be my friend until you have, and then we can talk about it. And out of common courtesy, I'm just going to tell people on Twitter, you should be watching Community because it's awesome, right?
I've seen the latest episode of Community now.
It's so good. I have no problem admitting that I cried a little bit. It was really good. But yeah, spoilers, man.
Oh, I had a spoiler happen to me recently with just you talking about House of Cards. Podcasts, you're not even safe in podcasts anymore.
No.
I was listening to On the Media from NPR, and in my car on a long drive, and my podcast player goes from episode to episode.
Yeah.
And they started putting in between their episodes these House of Cards rewatches. Because On the Media is a topical podcast, you know, it's timely. I'm listening to newest first,
right?
And it pops in, and there's a line of dialogue from the end of the most recent episode, which I hadn't got to yet. No, now what does that mean?
Yeah,
I know someone's a big boy, but who?
I mean,
how do you avoid that?
You know, we do this. Just talking about podcasts, like, you know, it's on Loading Ready Run now, and. My brother and I do the Fight the Future podcast, in which part of it is, you know, we're watching these movies or reading these books or whatever, and part of the podcast is we do sort of a plot synopsis. So it's definitely a spoiler. Like, we're just flat out talking about the entire thing. And, you know, we talk about spoiler warning and stuff, but we actually ran into it. We were doing Divergent, which... is not a good movie. I'm sorry.
Spoiler alert.
I'm sorry if you like the movie. Apparently the books are better. I don't know. Anyway, but as part of talking about the world and stuff, we actually delved a little bit into the second book, which hasn't been made into a movie yet, or it's going to be coming out or something, because there's some stuff revealed in the second book that actually makes the whole thing make a modicum of sense.
Right.
Like, it is completely bizarre and incoherent. And then it's like, we add this little bit into it's like a revelation in the second book. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that sort of helps. And so we felt that it was important to actually, like, mention that. But it turned out, and in hindsight, we probably should have been better about the spoiler stuff, because it was one of those things where it's like we were explicitly talking about Divergent,
right,
the first book,
and then
and so people were prepared for, you know, that's going to be a spoiler, and then we started mentioning stuff in the second book, and a couple people got legitimately annoyed with us for that, and I can see that. I mean, for one thing, the books have been out for a couple of years, but the movie hasn't come out yet,
right? So
people wouldn't have seen the book, and we took that, we got that feedback, and we're like, yeah, that's legit, and, you know, we're gonna try to be more sort of aware of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's easy to sort of, when you're doing something like that, or especially when you're dealing with like older stuff, you know, it's like a 10-year-old movie or something, to be like, man, if you haven't seen it by now, it's your own fault, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But there is an aspect of being like, well, yeah, but you can also just not be a dick about it and tell people that it's going to be a spoiler.
Yeah, I think if you're good about the spoiler alert and just let them know that, you know, there might be something in this piece of media that's going to come up that will spoil another piece of media, and that's just going to have to happen. And I mean, the book thing is interesting as well. That's a whole other thing, right? Is that how do you deal with
Game of Thrones, of course, has been dealing with that a lot.
Game of Thrones is a big one. Harry Potter, Divergent, the
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games one.
The Bible.
That Bible, exactly. Like, what's the statute there,
for
right?
Jesus, I'm just going to tell you right now.
Yeah.
Does he get better? Actually, spoilers.
Yeah. I mean, Game of Thrones is actually they've sort of come through the forest on that one, so to speak,
which is
right?
I guess that's one way to avoid spoilers, or you
bypass. Yeah, well, you just make them different, or just get to a point where you're now creating content that doesn't exist on the page, right? Which is kind of interesting. So,
are they already? I thought they weren't. I thought they still had a couple books.
No, there's still a couple books, but they're
messing with the.
The problem is that the
timelines.
books are one of the two most recent books. I think essentially got split into two. Like what was supposed to be one book, I think, got split into two books, and one book follows very specific characters, and another book follows very specific characters. And it would be incredibly stupid, and I agree, for HBO to be like, all right, let's just make a season where we focus on half of our characters and forget about all of these other characters.
Whereas they're doing it all concurrently.
Yeah, because you just can't do that, right? I mean, you can, because they've, I mean, spoiler alert for Game of Thrones, I think. I don't even know this, but I was pretty sure that I remember reading that, like, the guy who played Hodor had the whole year off.
Yeah.
And so did Bran, I guess, and that whole storyline is just hasn't been around at all.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to basically, and this is completely off topic from spoilers, but to basically say to a 13 or 14-year-old kid, take a year off and then come back, that kid's going to look so much older.
I'm going to go to school now.
Yeah. Apparently that's actually been, I know I was reading actually for Bran that it was actually their problem, although they can cover it because he's
supposed to be a cripple.
And so he's like kind of undercover.
Arya's been the hard one because she started off very much prepubescent.
Yeah.
Right,
and is supposed to be that same age.
Yeah.
But has been getting much older.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But it's funny the lengths that sometimes that studios or directors or whatever will go to, you know, to avoid spoilers, like with their own cast.
Yes.
Like we're at the point now where this kind of information is so valuable.
Yeah.
And is so you know, it's disseminated so so quickly and so indiscriminately that, you know, if you are working on whatever Doctor Who or
I'm trying to remember the movie, but there was a movie
Star Wars or something
where they shot, it might have been Battlestar Galactica, where they shot multiple endings and didn't tell the cast and crew which was the real ending.
That's interesting.
Wow.
But I like that. I mean, like that's just something that is really hard to do these days, right? Is you can't
actually surprise people,
whether it be in like a TV show or a book even or a new album. Like I remember, I think it was last year now that Beyonce just out of nowhere released that album of hers.
Yeah. Right.
With no notice, no prior notice, nobody had any idea, and all of a sudden it was just like, bam, here's this album, and apparently it was phenomenal, and I listened to it and it was fine. Not my cup of tea, but that's cool. Like I love the fact that can still happen in the world that we live in, because it really just doesn't seem to happen very often.
Yeah.
Part of the problem seems to be with the idea that things need to be marketed so heavily in advance.
Yeah.
Like Splatoon, it's been a year since it was announced.
Yeah.
And just came out under the gun.
We actually did I don't know if we actually did it in an episode of Checkpoint, but we talked about it in Checkpoint that there's the new there's a new racing game that just came out on was it Need for Speed, or I don't know, it was one of the pretty big like AAA racing games. They were just like we're going to do they announced the new one that's going to be coming out. It's like, it's a new we're going to take the series back to its roots. we think people are really going to like it, and you can try it out right now because it's on early access.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's
So
sweet.
have fun.
Like I love it when companies pull an Apple
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
Say, it's
yeah.
available today.
Like how absolutely batshit crazy would have the gaming world gone if the other day when Bethesda announced Fallout 4, they had been like, oh yeah, by the way, it's out next week.
Or Disney saying, we just bought the Star Wars franchise next week.
Next week, yeah. I mean, all Disney needs to do is, here's the original trilogy, not touched by Lucas. Enjoy. And but like, I just wish that stuff could happen more.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of surprises that I like. Like,
So, but I mean, of course, that's always at odds with, whatever Ain't It Cool News or
exactly.
There's all these companies
that rely on being able to get this news out. Yeah.
that they're because if Bethesda had the thing for Fallout 4, they have a couple hundred people have been working on it for 3 years or whatever. So it's like, how do you keep that under wraps?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, just spoilers in general. Like, I've been looking down at this the whole time. Magic cards, like weeks out of the year, like for every set, we spend 2 or 3 weeks in spoiler season.
But they're not even, but that's not even spoilers. Then that's necessary research.
Yeah, exactly. That's a company really just hyping their product up over the course of before release.
And I mean, the way Wizards has actually made their release schedule, we're literally like you're in spoiler season like half of the year.
Yeah, you spend I mean, it's not half of the year, but you spend like 3 weeks living in spoiler season, and then the set comes out, and you're in sort of this crazy, like, oh my god, the new set's out for like 4 weeks, and then you're like, all right, well, these cards are boring now. Whoop! Oh, thank God, spoiler season starts again in like a week.
Yeah, like I'm just thinking about like Tap Concede when we do that.
Yeah,
we'll do like episode on these spoilers that just came out, and then more spoilers will come out, and we'll do another episode of that, and it's like you do sort of 2 episodes in a row about spoilers, and then another episode about something else, another episode about something else, and then we're back to more spoiler episodes.
Yeah.
But that's a situation where if you're not paying attention to the spoilers, you're not remaining competitive. You're not doing your job as a Magic player. Versus,
and I mean that's actually it's an interesting situation because the spoilers actually have a real, not necessarily a monetary value, but they have a real value. Yeah. And getting access to those cards gives you an actual, an advantage. I guess this is a little bit straying from the spoiler thing, but like I remember there was a big controversy in like the Battlefield community where they were going to do a thing. They were doing a thing where if you bought the season pass, people who bought the season pass would get maps a week before everybody else.
Yeah.
And in the Battlefield community, when you're playing PvP deathmatch stuff, when a bunch of people have a week more to study the level and figure out all the level design, figure out where all the spots are, where the spawn points are, where all the stuff is. They have, especially in like a super competitive environment, they have a massive advantage.
Yep.
And so, people were saying that like they're basically saying you have to buy the season pass if you want to be competitive.
Exactly. Yep. As opposed to say, knowing that Captain Picard turns into a Borg doesn't make me win at Star Trek.
Yeah, that's true. Wait, what? Captain Picard turned into a...
Can you...
It's better.
No. Can you really ever win at Star Trek?
Well, if you know where to stop, yes.
Yeah.
The only way to play, the only way to win is not to play. Or play way, way too much. So, I don't know what the... was there any other aspects of the spoilers we want to
Anyone
talk
got any spoilers they're holding on to? Because I've got something interesting.
What do you got?
You know Han Solo is married?
Yes. Yeah, that was...
In the new thing?
Yeah.
In the new... Yeah, they just released... Because they've been doing these comic series, and they just announced yesterday, right? I think, that Han Solo, this whole time...
In canon...
has been married.
Oh, he didn't get married between the movies.
No.
He was married.
He was married, and this is basically saying throughout the original trilogy he was married, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Like right through.
The comic book takes place in between Empire and Jedi, which means that He was married since before
New Hope.
At least.
It's not him and Chewbacca, is it?
It's not.
No.
But yeah, that was an interesting one. I know a lot of people got freaked out.
So much
that.
for my headcanon.
Spoilers on Star Wars.
I mean, I guess so. Like, can you think of, just to wrap this up? I'm curious. What's the biggest thing that you can ever remember being spoiled on?
That you were spoiled. That was spoiled on before it happened.
Before it happened. Is there anything that's that you've ever and like? So for me, like, I don't think I've ever been spoiled on something so hard that I was so upset that I remember it to this day. I know I've been spoiled on episodes of TV here and there and maybe a movie, but never anything like I really cared about.
I think Mass Effect 3.
You got spoiled on Mass Effect 3.
I wish I hadn't known. Maybe it's not even a spoiler, but I wish I could have done both endings without any prior knowledge.
That's fair.
But talking about Mass Effect is another podcast in itself.
I mean, the Sixth Sense thing. I found out. I heard about before I watched the movie.
Before you watched the movie.
So you're sort of watching. So that changes your.
Oh yeah,
your
that's one of those ones that actually does just completely change how the movie plays out for you when you're watching it, right? So
doesn't necessarily ruin the movie.
No,
but it just makes it different. And actually, you mentioned Usual Suspects, and I actually just watched that movie like quite recently, and I knew it was one of those things where like I knew something that's like Kaiser Soze. There was something
was up.
That there was something about him, and I was like, "There's something." I remember it's like all I know. I remember that there's something tricky, but I don't remember what it was. So I was fooled.
But you were on heightened alert the whole time.
But I was like, "There's something. What was the thing that I'm missing?"
I want to roll back here and change my answer. Okay. This might incite more discussion. If not, take it to the comments. Star Wars, and not in the way you think. I honestly think that the prequels I would have enjoyed a lot more if I had never seen 4, 5, and 6.
4, 5, and 6 first?
Yep.
I mean, that's something that that's something that was just a fact of life for people our age. But for kids now,
you could do that.
And that's what I will do with, like, if I have a kid, he or she will watch Star Wars because they have no choice. But I will make them watch the original trilogy
4, 5,
first.
6, 1, 2, 3.
Machete order?
Oh, I guess I could make them do the
machete would be best.
That would be interesting, yeah. I feel like the problem with doing that is that they would need to be a little bit older than I was when I first watched Star Wars. Like, I watched Star Wars, I think, for the first time when I was like 8 or 9, and I don't think thinking back, I probably would have been able to handle watching 6 movies in that order. Especially considering the difference in quality. Like, I think a lot of kids watching the original Star Wars trilogy these days.
Why did everything look crappier in the fourth?
Yeah.
It's like, it's supposed to be the future. Why does everything look worse?
Yeah, this looks like shit.
But knowing that Anakin is Darth Vader, or will become Darth Vader, kind of really colors all of his actions.
That's true, actually. If you don't know that, I've never thought about that.
The trick is you have to not only, you've got to have your kid and then raise him in an environment where he doesn't know about the Darth Vader thing.
Yeah.
First.
That would be tricky in itself.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you got to show that to him young. So that, because if you wait till they're like 10 or something, chances are they'll have found out from some other source.
Some savage at school will have ruined it for them.
Or whatever, brain implant internet or whatever it is
true.
at that point.
Yeah.
Birthday party.
Yeah. No birthday parties.
Harsh.
No. Basically, he or she will sit in their room and do nothing until the age of 10, at which point they'll watch Star Wars and be let out into the world.
So you're pretty much you want to have a kid solely for the psychological experiment aspect.
Yeah. Also, having only eaten bread, ketchup, mustard, and let's say broccoli.
And
it's
then
the only things they're allowed to eat.
Also have them watch Memento the other way, the wrong way, the forwards way. Yeah, so basically, I guess the end result is don't be a dick about spoilers.
Yeah, like it's so easy.
Don't be a dick, and that's both sides of that, right?
Yeah,
don't be a dick in terms of like if somebody says don't spoil something, don't spoil it.
Don't spoil it, and don't get angry if something gets like. Look, we live in a world where your TV shows and your movies and your video games are going to get spoiled unless you're careful or unless you basically just remove yourself from the equation.
Yeah,
right?
and if you are really concerned about, if you are really concerned about whatever Game of Thrones or your thing and you are not able to watch it, then maybe you don't go on Twitter.
Just don't go on Twitter.
Or maybe you put like a little filter on or something.
Yeah, like it's not hard.
There are some nice filtering options for Twitter these days.
It's the old like, the entire world needs to stop talking about this because of me. And of course, Twitter always has the problem where, people are like talking to their friends about it, but they're actually broadcasting it to the world.
Yeah.
So sometimes people are not even sort of aware that, that people who are following them may be in the spoiler zone or whatever. But
it's your responsibility to avoid spoilers, except when it's your responsibility to avoid putting them out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's some sort of moderation, I guess. And obviously, as time goes on, it starts to lean more towards being able to just talk about it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it's a really old thing, it's still kind of a courtesy just to be like, hey, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, even, like, it's weird. Like, there's just, even with the, like, Darth Vader is Luke's father. Every once in a while, there'll be like a little, like, I'll have, like, just a little twinge before I say that. It's like,
do you know?
I could say that.
Yeah, that's one of the...
I could say that.
I mean, there are definitely spoilers out there that just kind of are okay.
To paraphrase one of my favorite podcasters, every day someone's born who hasn't seen the Flintstones. Which means every day there's someone out there who doesn't know who the Great Gazoo is.
Right. All right. So I think that's going to do it for this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for watching. And, of course, this podcast, like everything on Loading Ready Run, is supported by our Patreon. So please, if you enjoy this podcast, you can subscribe to it in iTunes.
I think it's down here.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. It's in one of the corners.
I think I've got the date.
I think you have the date. I have the Patreon.
All right. So yeah, you can if you enjoy this podcast, please support us on Patreon. And even if you don't want to do the Patreon thing, you can still subscribe on iTunes, or just go to the forum and tell us what you think, or in the YouTube comments.
Yep.
Yeah. What are please? Let's just say. Like, maybe don't talk about spoilers in the actual comments to the video. I know some people are probably going to do that anyway.
Ahab kills Queequeg.
Just go yell a big spoiler into your pillow, come back, and then talk about spoilers in a meaningful way in the comments below.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.